Napping in a hospital's empty room was my worst idea. The exhaustion was a physical thing, a lead weight pulling at my eyelids, dragging down my shoulders. Final year of med school. Rotations, exams, the constant pressure to know everything. It felt like drowning, and I was pretty sure I was forgetting how to swim. Dr. Sharma caught me nodding off during rounds. "Elias," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You look like you haven't slept in a week. You need to take care of yourself. You're no good to anyone if you're running on fumes." I mumbled something about being fine, about having too much to do. She just sighed. "Elias, I see you. We all do. Don't let this break you before you even start." That night, the hospital felt even more oppressive than usual. The fluorescent lights hummed a discordant tune. The beeping of machines a relentless reminder of the fragility of life. I was supposed to be studying, cramming for the cardiology exam, but the words swam before my eyes. I needed a break. I needed sleep. Wandering through the labyrinthine corridors, I found myself on the 5th floor. It was mostly storage, old equipment covered in dust sheets, forgotten supplies. The air was thick and still, a stark contrast to the frantic energy of the ER downstairs. I kept walking, drawn by a quiet stillness. Then I saw it. A room at the end of the hall, the door slightly ajar. No sign on the door. Peeking inside, I saw it was empty. Bare walls, a single ancient-looking hospital bed in the center, covered with a faded, threadbare blanket. Dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through the grimy window. It was perfect. I knew I shouldn't. I knew I should go back to the library, or at least find a less creepy place to rest. But the pull was too strong. The exhaustion had eroded my willpower, leaving me vulnerable to the siren call of sleep. I pushed the door closed, the click echoing in the silence. The air was cold, almost damp. I lay down on the bed, the springs groaning beneath my weight. The blanket smelled faintly of mildew, and something else, something indefinable, something almost medicinal. I was asleep within minutes. The first nap was short, maybe an hour. I woke up feeling slightly refreshed, but with a nagging sense of unease. The room felt colder than before. I shook it off, blaming it on my overactive imagination and the generally unsettling atmosphere of the hospital. I went back the next night, and the night after that. It became a routine, a secret escape, a stolen sanctuary. I told myself it was just a temporary measure, a way to cope with the stress. But I knew, deep down, that it was something more. The disturbances started subtly. A creaking floorboard when no one was there. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. I'd wake up with a start, heart pounding, convinced I wasn't alone. But the room would always be empty. Then the nightmares began. Vivid, disturbing images that lingered long after I woke. Faces distorted in pain, whispers I couldn't understand, a feeling of being watched. They were always different, but they shared a common thread, a sense of profound dread, of something ancient and malevolent lurking just beyond the edge of my perception. I started researching the history of the hospital. St. Jude's had been around for over a century, and the 5th floor had a particularly checkered past. I found mentions of a ward that had been closed down due to complications. Vague, ominous references to unexplained phenomena and patient unrest. One name kept cropping up: Arthur Reeves. A patient who had died in the hospital in the 1950s, under unusual circumstances. The details were scarce, but I learned that he had been confined to a room on the 5th floor, a room that had been isolated from the rest of the ward. My room. My behavior started to change. I was irritable, distracted, making careless mistakes at work. I snapped at Sarah, my girlfriend, when she tried to talk to me about my stress. "You're not yourself, Elias," she said, her voice laced with worry. "What's going on?" I couldn't tell her. How could I explain the creeping dread, the feeling that I was being consumed by something I couldn't understand? One night, Marcus, the orderly, stopped me in the hallway. He was a quiet, observant man, always shuffling around with his cleaning cart, seemingly invisible to everyone else. "You look tired, doctor," he said, his eyes dark and knowing. "Just a long week," I mumbled. He shook his head slowly. That room, the one on 5, it's not good to sleep there. I froze. What do you mean? He hesitated, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. This hospital, it holds on to things, to memories, to pain. Some places are, stronger than others. That room, it has a history. What history? I pressed, my voice barely a whisper. He just shrugged. Best not to disturb the past, doctor. Some things are better left alone. He turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the dimly lit hallway, the weight of his words heavy on my shoulders. The nightmares intensified. I started hearing whispers during the day, faint, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. I felt like I was being watched, constantly, by something just out of sight. One night, I woke up in the room to find the blanket pulled halfway off the bed. A small metal tray that had been on a table in the corner was now on the floor. I was certain I had left it on the table. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just my imagination. Something was happening. I tried to stay away from the room, but the exhaustion was relentless. I was trapped in a vicious cycle, sleep deprivation, leading to paranoia driving me back to the room in search of a brief respite. The climax came on a Tuesday. I had been up for almost 36 hours, running on coffee and adrenaline. I stumbled into the room, barely able to stand. I collapsed on the bed, desperate for sleep. The nightmare started almost immediately. This time, it wasn't just images and whispers. I felt a presence in the room, a cold, suffocating weight pressing down on me. I saw a figure standing in the corner, a shadowy form that seemed to coalesce from the darkness. It was Arthur Reeves. His face was gaunt and pale, his eyes burning with an unholy light. He reached out a skeletal hand towards me, his touch sending a jolt of icy fear through my body. "You don't belong here," he whispered, his voice a rasping croak. "You're not good enough. You'll never be good enough." His words echoed my deepest fears, the doubts that gnawed at me constantly. I felt myself sinking into the bed, paralyzed by terror. The room began to spin, the walls closing in around me. The air grew thick and heavy, suffocating me. He continued, "You will become like me, trapped in this place forever." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to move, but I was frozen in place. I was trapped, helpless, at the mercy of this malevolent entity. Then I heard a voice, a familiar voice calling my name. "Elias, Elias, wake up." It was Dr. Sharma. I saw her standing in the doorway, her face etched with concern. The light from the hallway streamed into the room, momentarily dispelling the darkness. The figure of Arthur Reeves flickered and vanished. The oppressive weight lifted. I gasped for air, struggling to sit up. "Elias, what's wrong?" "You were screaming," Dr. Sharma said, rushing to my side. I tried to explain, to tell her about the nightmares, about the figure in the corner. But the words wouldn't come. I just stared at her, my eyes wide with terror. She helped me out of the room, supporting me as we walked down the hallway. "You need to get some rest, Elias," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Real rest. Go home. Get some sleep." I went home. I slept for 12 hours straight. But when I woke up, the feeling of dread was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. I told Sarah everything. She listened patiently, holding my hand, offering words of comfort. But I could see the skepticism in her eyes. She attributed it to stress, to sleep deprivation, to an overactive imagination. I went back to the hospital, determined to find some concrete evidence, something to prove that what I had experienced was real. But I found nothing. The room was empty, just as I had first found it. The bed, the walls, the floor, everything was exactly as it had been. I passed my exams. I graduated. I became a doctor. But the experience in that room, it changed me. I carry it with me, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of reality. I still work at St. Jude's. I try to avoid the 5th floor, but sometimes I find myself drawn back to that hallway, to that room. One night, I was walking past the room when I heard a faint whisper. A voice, just barely audible, calling my name. Elias. I froze, my blood running cold. I turned and looked at the room. The door was slightly ajar, just as it had been the first time I saw it. I stood there for a long moment, paralyzed by fear. Then, I forced myself to walk away. I don't know what happened in that room. I don't know if it was real or just a figment of my sleep-deprived imagination. But I know that something changed me. I know that I will never be the same. And sometimes, when I'm walking through the hospital late at night, I catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. A flicker of movement, a shadow that seems to linger for just a moment too long. And I wonder, did I really escape that room? Or is a part of me still trapped within its walls?